I started sewing by hand when I was a little girl, but then I really got into sewing in college when I went to become a nurse. Didn't quite have the patience for that, but sewing was really fun to me, so I started taking classes. Hi, I'm Amy Allen, a sewing instructor and blogger from Portland, Oregon. I teach classes both in person and online, and today I'd like to review several different serger stitches with you and talk about the best uses for each of them. So what you'll need is obviously a serger, and then you'll need serger thread. I recommend that you have 4 different colors so that it's a lot easier for you to adjust your tensions if you find that you have an issue. You'll also need some strips of fabric. Anything that you have, find the fabrics that you sew with the most. I'm using a cone of cotton right here, and I prefer to have my strips be about 2 inches wide and 18 inches long for making samples. You should also have some thread snips, a pair of tweezers. They probably came with your machine. And this is a needle inserter or lint brush. You may not have one of these with your machine, but they are very handy, so pick one of those up because we'll be removing the needles. So to start off with, I have this machine set up on a 4-thread overlock. So you'll want to review the manual that came with your machine to find out exactly how to thread yours, but generally your threading order will be upper looper, lower looper, right needle, left needle. So in here you can see all of these different thread guides. There are some beautiful illustrations inside to help you thread your machine. We also have our stitch width knob right here. And on the side, which you may not be able to see, I have my stitch length and I also have my differential feed. And right here, this is how I lift and lower my presser foot over here. And as you can see, for the 4-thread overlock, I also have 2 needles in the machine and both of them are threaded. Now this machine has a very handy needle threader, so those are really wonderful. If your machine has that, be sure to get used to those because they come in handy. So let's go ahead and serge a sample of this stitch. Something that's really nice about this machine is that it has this extension table right here, so I have plenty of room to work on my projects. So with the serger, you can go ahead and you can have the presser foot lowered, and you can just serge away because the feed dogs come forward, they'll grab the fabric and go ahead and pull it through. I've already made a thread chain on this machine once I set it up for the stitch that I'm doing, so I'm all set. I will cut off some fabric while I serge, just to make sure that my stitch really wraps around the edge of what I'm doing. So here, I can go back here and I can look at my stitch. I can check it out on the top and on the bottom. And if I'm happy with my tensions, my needle tension may need to be tightened just a little bit there. I can adjust that. I can continue on with my sample and then just run it right out. So this 4-thread overlock is really, really wonderful for seaming. It's a very strong stitch because you have both of those needle threads. So if you're going to serge anywhere, like a crotch seam or a sleeve, something's going to have a lot of stress on it, this is the stitch that I would use. It's your most commonly used stitch. You'll find this in a lot of garments. So next, let's do a 3-thread overlock. So to set up this machine for this stitch, I'll raise my needles to the highest position. I'll lift my presser foot and I will snip this thread here. Now I could go in and I could remove the needle threads from around the lower looper to really make sure that the needle threads are free before I make this stitch. But another thing I could do, since I went ahead and snipped it up here because I'm just going to use my right needle, I can lower that foot and I can continue making a thread chain until that thread is out of that needle. So then again, I'll make sure my needles are at the highest position. So I can use that needle inserter brush to come right up here. Let me move that lower looper out of the way just a little bit more so that I can hold on to that needle while I loosen the screw that holds the needle in place. And I can just pull that right out. And then I'll tighten that screw back up and put the needle somewhere safe. Okay, so now I'll just adjust my tensions a little bit. I know which settings I'm using. I'm just barely tightening each of these. And I'm leaving everything else the same on this machine. So I'll go ahead and make another stitch sample. So this 3-thread overlock, you have the single needle and you have both loopers. So here we can see on the top, the red thread is my upper looper. The purple is my right needle. If I use my left needle, this would be just a little bit wider. And my lower looper is blue. So this is a beautiful stitch. Again, you can use this for seaming if you want to. You can also use this with decorative threads, which is really beautiful. So here I've used a yarn in my upper looper. Here I've used a pearl cotton. And over here, like on this scarf sample, I used a rayon in both the upper and lower looper. So this is wonderful for decorative threading and also for seaming. So next let's do a 3-thread flat lock. So you bring your needle tension way down. You're going to leave your upper looper around the standard tension and your lower looper is going to have a much higher tension. So with a flat lock, you can either choose to cut off fabric or you can choose to not cut off fabric. So this, you'll see how it bunches up a little bit on the back. That's because that lower looper tension has to be so tight so that it'll lay down nice and flat next to the stitch once I open this up. So sometimes I hold on to it back here while I serge. Bring this right out of the machine here. So this flat lock will be flat once I open this up. So I have my upper looper right there, and this is actually my needle thread over here, pulled all the way over to the edge. So because this needle thread is so loose, I can open this up, and this lays nice and flat. I have a sample here. I used it on this bag. Here I flat locked this zipper with yarn just to give it a really nice texture. And this I did cut the fabric while I serged it and just very carefully opened it up. So you have that. And next we will do a 3-thread rolled hem. So with the rolled hem, there are a few special things you need to do with your machine. Again, you'll want to check your manual for these. But there's something called a stitch finger inside your machine that you'll need to remove. Now on this machine, I can simply pull it out. But for your machine, you may need to actually change out the entire stitch plate, or you may have a small finger that you pull out. So once I do that, I'll also want to make my cutting width as narrow as possible, and I'll want to put my stitch width on the rolled hem setting so the stitches are very close together. I'll also need to adjust my tensions, and so for mine, my needle thread is definitely higher than the standard tension, so is my upper looper and my lower looper. Now I'm only going to serge this on a single layer of fabric because it will not turn under very well if you were doing it on 2 layers of fabric. So with the single layer, you're just fine though. So it's serging very slowly because that stitch length is very condensed. This is so beautiful with decorative threads. Rolled hems are amazing on chiffons and silks, and you can just use them anywhere. So I'll go ahead and pull this out here because the stitch can take a very long time to make. But we have a small sample here. So you can see how beautiful and filled in that is with that upper looper. And here on the back, our lower looper thread is nice and tight, pulled down by the needle thread so that it just turns right over. And I have a sample of what you can do with this here. Is you can make really lovely pin tucks. If you don't have, chiffon, you're not going to wear a ball gown anywhere sometime soon. You can use this to add some really beautiful effects. So those are 4 main stitches, and I hope you have fun with them.